the music on the $40 million yacht. The Serenity was loud, but the sudden thump of a police launch slamming against its hull cut through everything. Arthur Vance, millionaire CEO, shielded his eyes as blue and red lights strafed his guests. He was about to yell at the intrusion when a voice cold as the ocean spray came from the police boat. "Arthur." He froze. It wasn't the police. It was his wife, Eleanor, and she wasn't alone. She was flanked by 2 armed officers and a man holding a thick binder. The party was over. His life was over. And she had planned it all. Eleanor Vance watched the yacht from the panoramic 30th floor window of the law office. The Serenity. It was an absurd, ironic name for the vessel that had become the flagship of her husband's betrayal. From this high up, the Newport Beach harbor was a tapestry of glittering lights, and Arthur's party was the most obnoxious jewel in the display. She could hear the faint thumping of the bass, a heartbeat of disrespect, even through the thick glass. "They're all there," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. Marcus Thorne, her lawyer, clicked off his pen. The board members he bribed the investors for the Shell Corp and her. "Isabella," Eleanor said. The name tasted like ash. Isabella Rossi. The 25-year-old influencer who was at this very moment playing hostess on the yacht Eleanor's money had paid for. "Are you certain you want to do this, Ellie?" Marcus asked. He was the only person alive who still called her that. He had been her father's lawyer, the man who had helped build Vance Global Logistics from a single freighter into a billion-dollar empire. He was family. Eleanor turned from the window. The woman reflected in the glass was not the fragile socialite Arthur described to his friends. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant chignon. Her simple black dress was a uniform of mourning, not for her marriage, but for her own naivety. "He thinks I'm at a spa in Ojai," Eleanor said. "He thinks I'm getting a facial and crying into a $500 a night pillow. He thinks I'm stupid." "He's a fool," Marcus said, tapping the thick binder on his desk. "But he was a thorough fool. The forensic accounting report from Mr. Chen. It's breathtaking. He's been siphoning money for 18 months. He set up Rossi Holdings in the Cayman Islands, using her name, and has been awarding it consulting contracts for millions. The party tonight isn't just a party, Eleanor. It's his exit." Eleanor nodded. "The final transfer. He's moving the last $20 million to liquidate the account and flee the country. He thinks he's celebrating a new deal. In reality, he's celebrating his own escape." The memory of her discovery 3 weeks ago was still sharp, a physical wound. It wasn't a lipstick-stained collar or a suspicious text. It was colder. It was an email left open on his study computer by mistake. An email to a private banker in Switzerland detailing the final liquidation of assets. The email chain included Bella Rossi, who had asked, "Does she know yet I'm tired of hiding?" Arthur's reply had sealed his fate. "She doesn't know anything. She's too busy with her charities. By the time she notices we'll be in Dubai, and her name won't even be on the company she thinks she owns. Stop worrying. She thinks she owns." That was the line, the arrogance, the pure distilled contempt for her, the woman whose inheritance he was stealing. Her father, James Vance, had made her the 51% majority shareholder on his deathbed. Arthur was the CEO, the public face, but Eleanor was the owner, and he had forgotten it. "Detective Karras is on standby," Marcus said, interrupting her thoughts. "The Coast Guard is with her. They have the warrant. Once Mr. Chen confirms the final wire transfer has been initiated, we move." "Are you sure you want to be there?" Eleanor picked up her purse. I'm not going to hide in a lawyer's office while he gives my father's company to that child. I want him to see my face when his world ends. I want him to know it was me." She walked to the door, all ice and steel. "Let's go, Marcus. It's time to crash the party." On the 150-foot deck of the Serenity, Arthur Vance was in every sense the king. At 45, he was distractingly handsome, with a thick head of silver-streaked hair and a smile that had disarmed boardrooms and bedrooms for 2 decades. He wore a linen suit, no tie, and a Patek Philippe Nautilus on his wrist, the one Eleanor had given him for their 10th anniversary. "To the future," he boomed, raising a glass of Dom Perignon. His audience, a mix of fawning investors and Newport socialites, cheered back. At his side, Isabella Bella Rossi was a vision in a blood-red Gucci gown. She was draped over him, her hand possessively on his chest. She was everything Eleanor wasn't: young, loud, and spectacularly unsubtle. "Arthur, darling, Mr. Harrison was just asking when the Laguna estate will be refreshed." Bella said, her voice a calculated purr. "I told him the minimalist look is so cold. I'm thinking more Versace." Arthur chuckled and kissed her temple. "Whatever my queen wants." The implication was clear to everyone. The old queen was out. The new one was already measuring for curtains. A venture capitalist named Ben Harrington clapped Arthur on the back. "Big moves tonight, Arthur. Big moves. This new international logistics partnership is a game changer. You're a genius." "You just have to know when to strike, Ben," Arthur said, his eyes glittering. "When to cut dead weight and streamline for the future. Vance Global is about to be lighter, faster, and more profitable than ever." Dead weight? He'd called Eleanor to her face last week. She had confronted him not about the money, but about the affair. She had wanted to give him one last chance to come clean, to salvage something. "Eleanor, don't be hysterical," he'd scoffed, adjusting his tie in their cavernous walk-in closet. "Bella is just an intern. You're being paranoid. Honestly, this obsession is unattractive. You should focus on your gardening or whatever it is you do. Leave the business to me." He had gaslit her, patting her on the head as if she were a distressed poodle. It was that moment, that condescending pat, that had erased any lingering doubt about what she had to do. Now on the yacht, Bella was holding court. "I just don't understand how she could let herself go," Bella was saying to a small, rapt circle of women. "A man like Arthur, he has needs. He needs a partner, not a museum piece." "What about his wife?" one of the women asked, a rare flicker of decency in her eyes. "Eleanor is such a lovely woman." Bella waved a dismissive hand. Her diamond bracelets paid for by Vance Global's consulting fees catching the light. "Oh, Ellie, she's fragile. Always has been. The pressure of the company was just too much for her. Arthur had to step in and save it. He's saving her, really. She'll be much happier in a quiet, simple life. Once the divorce is final, of course." Arthur, overhearing this, beamed with pride. He loved this. The public adoration, the beautiful woman on his arm, the secret of the $20 million that was at that very second sliding from his company's main account into his offshore haven. He slipped away from the party and went down to his private study in the stateroom. He opened his laptop. The banking portal was open. Transaction status pending. He sipped his champagne. This was the last piece. The transfer was set to execute at 9:00 p.m. It was 8:58. He watched the screen. Transaction status processing. A small bead of sweat trickled down his temple. This was the big one. The one that would be noticed. But by the time the alarms went off on Monday morning, he and Bella would be on a private jet to a country with no extradition treaty. Transaction status complete. A wide, predatory grin split Arthur's face. He closed the laptop. He had done it. He had actually done it. He was free. He was rich. And he had won. He walked back onto the deck, grabbing Bella and pulling her into a deep theatrical kiss as the crowd cheered. "It's done," he whispered in her ear. "Everything is ours." "I knew you'd handle it, my king," she purred. It was then, at the absolute peak of his triumph, that the first blue light hit his face. The music cut out, and a new boat, grey and menacing, slammed into the side of his pristine white yacht. The discovery hadn't been a single moment. It was a slow, sickening unravelling. It began 6 months ago. Eleanor, as majority shareholder, still received the top-level quarterly financials. It was a formality. Arthur always walked her through them, his voice a lulling drone of market fluctuations and aggressive expansion, his finger pointing to the healthy bottom line. She had always trusted him. Her father had trusted him. But this time, a name stood out in the exceptional vendor payments addendum. Rossi Holdings, LLC, $1.5 million. "Who is Rossi Holdings?" she had asked over dinner at their Laguna Beach home, the ocean crashing below them. Arthur didn't even look up from his steak. "Logistics Consulting, a new firm out of Panama. They're streamlining our South American routes. It's boring, technical stuff. Don't worry your head about it." "Rossi," Eleanor had mused. "Like that new intern you hired, Isabella Rossi." Arthur's fork had clattered against his plate. Just for a second, his eyes, when they met hers, were cold. "Don't be ridiculous, Eleanor. It's a common name. Are you implying something?" "No, of course not," she had said, forcing a smile. But the seed was planted. That night, she went into her father's old study. She ran a simple corporate search. Rossi Holdings, LLC, was registered in the Cayman Islands, not Panama. And its date of incorporation was just 1 day after Bella Rossi had been hired as Arthur's personal assistant. It was a thread. She pulled it. She called Mr. Chen a forensic accountant her father had used for decades. "I need you to be discreet, David," she'd said. "I'm worried about some irregularities." For 2 weeks, she lived a lie. She attended charity luncheons. She hosted a garden party. She smiled and kissed her husband, all while Mr. Chen was digging tunneling into the digital foundations of Vance Global. The call came on a Tuesday. "You need to come to my office, Mrs. Vance, and you need to come alone." Mr. Chen's office was a sterile box of white and grey, filled with file servers. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. He put a single sheet of paper on the desk. It was a wire transfer confirmation. "This is the first one," he said. 18 months ago, $250,000, coded as software upgrade. It went to Rossi Holdings. This is the second. $500,000. Port leasing fees. This is the third. Fuel surcharge. Docking arbitration. Contingency fees. It's a new one every month. He's been bleeding the company dry, Mrs. Vance. Eleanor felt the blood drain from her face. How much? As of this morning, Mr. Chen said $37 million. She had to grip the chair to stay upright. It wasn't just an affair. The affair was a symptom. The disease was this. He was systematically gutting her father's legacy. But the board, the CFO. How could no one notice? He's been faking the receivables, Chen explained, pointing to a complex flowchart. He's creating phantom clients, logging their payments to cover the holes, then writing off the losses as bad debt 6 months later. It's sophisticated, but the money he's stealing, it's all going to one place, an account in Bella Rossi's name. That was when the other file had appeared. Mr. Chen slid a slim manila folder across the desk. This is the other part of it. I'm so sorry, Eleanor. Inside were photographs, Arthur and Bella. In Paris at a hotel she and Arthur had stayed at for their anniversary. Arthur and Bella on a beach in St. Bart's. Arthur and Bella kissing walking out of a jewelry store in Beverly Hills, her hand on her stomach. Her hand on her stomach. Eleanor's breath hitched. Is she? We believe she is pregnant, yes, Mr. Chen said gently. The final piece of the puzzle, I'm afraid, is the Vance International Partnership, the one he's announcing tonight at the party. It's not a partnership, it's a sale. A sale. He's planning to sell the company's entire freight fleet to a competitor disguised as a merger. But the payment isn't going to Vance Global. It's going to him. To a new shell corp, the final $20 million. The party is the cover for him to get the last signatures. Once that wire transfer goes through tonight, he's gone, and the company will be an empty shell. Eleanor sat in silence for a full minute, the evidence of her life's destruction laid out before her. The betrayal was so total, so absolute, it was almost beautiful in its monstrosity. He wasn't just leaving her. He was erasing her. She stood up. The shock had passed, replaced by a cold Arctic rage. He's not just stealing from me, Mr. Chen. He's stealing from my father. He's stealing from the 5,000 employees at Vance Global. He thinks I'm dead weight. I'm about to become the anchor that drags him to the bottom of the ocean. She picked up her phone. Get me Marcus Thorne. Tell him it's a code red. And then get me the Newport Beach Police. Marcus Thorne's law firm, Thorne and Associates, occupied the top 3 floors of the most expensive high-rise in Newport. Marcus himself was a lion in his late 60s, with a shock of white hair and a reputation for being ruthless in a courtroom. When Eleanor walked in with Mr. Chen's files, Marcus cancelled his next 3 meetings. He read the report, his expression growing darker with every page. When he finished, he closed the binder, removed his glasses, and looked at Eleanor. The ungrateful parasite, he whispered. I told your father. I told him Arthur was too smooth, too ambitious. I know, Marcus, Eleanor said. But I told you so won't get my company back. He's moving the last $20 million tonight. We have to stop him. This is beyond a civil complaint, Ellie, Marcus said, his legal mind already racing. This isn't just divorce. This is grand larceny. This is wire fraud. This is racketeering. He used company assets to bribe board members. I see the payments here. He forged your signature on the corporate resolution to open the new accounts. So what do? We don't just file for divorce. We send him to prison. Marcus said, his voice hardening. We need the police, not just any police. We need the Economic Crimes Unit. We need someone who can understand this and who won't be intimidated by the name Vance. He picked up his private line. Get me Detective Maria Karras. Yes, I'll hold. He looked at Eleanor. Karras is a bulldog. She brought down that real estate Ponzi scheme in Irvine last year. She hates rich men who think they're above the law. She's perfect. An hour later, they were in a sterile interrogation room at the Newport Beach Police Department. Detective Karras was not what Eleanor expected. She was young, sharp, and wore a leather jacket and an expression of profound skepticism. Mrs. Vance. Mr. Thorne. I'm busy. You told my sergeant this was an active multi-million-dollar fraud. What I'm seeing, she said, Flipping through the top pages of the report is a very rich woman who's unhappy her husband is cheating on her. "Did you get to page 5, Detective?" Marcus asked calmly. Karas sighed and flipped to page 5. It was the forged signature. And page 7, the wire transfer to Rossi Holdings. Page 12, the Cayman Islands Incorporation papers in Bella Rossi's name. Karas stopped flipping. She read. For 10 solid minutes, she read. The only sound was the buzz of the fluorescent lights. She looked up, her skepticism gone. "He's liquidating tonight at the party." "At 9:00 p.m., Eleanor confirmed. "He's using the party as a cover to get the final signatures from 2 investors who are in on the deal. He's moving $20 million. Then he's gone." "Dubai," Karas said, reading a note. "No extradition. Smart." "He thinks he is," Eleanor said. "He thinks I'm a fool." Karas closed the binder. She stood up. "Mrs. Vance, what you're alleging, if this is true, this is one of the largest single-day embezzlement cases I've ever seen. But I can't just raid a party on a yacht based on your word." "You don't have to," Marcus said. He slid a laptop across the table. "Mr. Chen is a white-hat hacker. He has a back door into the company's servers. He's monitoring the accounts in real time. The moment that $20 million transfer is initiated, it's a felony in progress. You'll have your probable cause." Karas stared at the laptop. A plan was forming in her eyes. "A boat, huh? In the middle of the harbor. That makes him a flight risk. I can get an emergency warrant from a judge contingent on that transfer. But I'll need a way to stop him from sailing off." "I've already called in a favor," Marcus said. "The U.S. Coast Guard Newport sector is a very good friend of mine. They're on standby for a vessel inspection at my signal. They'll be our muscle. You'll be the law." Karas nodded, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face. "Okay. I'm in. But you, Mrs. Vance, you stay here. This is a police operation." "No," Eleanor said, standing up. "I'm not. This isn't just a criminal. That is my husband. He is stealing my father's life's work. I will be on that boat. I will be there when you cuff him. He needs to see me. He needs to know I'm the one who took him down. Or there's no deal." Karas studied her for a long moment. The fragile socialite was gone. In her place was a woman Karas understood. A woman bent on justice. "Fine," Karas said, grabbing her radio. "But you do exactly as I say. Get your lawyer friend, Mr. Thorne. We have a party to crash." The party on the Serenity was reaching its crescendo. The champagne was flowing so freely that the deck was sticky. Arthur Vance, having secured his financial freedom, was now indulging in his other appetites. He had Bella pinned against the railing, kissing her deeply, his hand sliding up her red dress as the crowd of socialites and investors hooted and cheered. "Get a room!" Ben Harrington shouted, laughing. "We'll get a plane!" Arthur laughed back, pulling Bella close. "To hell with rooms, we'll buy an island." Bella giggled, drunk on champagne and power. "I want one with a volcano, my king. Whatever you want." He felt invincible. Every single person on this boat he thought either wanted to be him or be with him. They envied his success, his yacht, his beautiful young mistress. They envied his freedom. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, annoyed at the interruption. The screen was dark, but a single notification banner was at the top. It was from his corporate email. "Subject urgent, server maintenance." He frowned. He hadn't approved any maintenance. He tapped it. The email was from his IT director, Mr. Vance. We've detected a critical security anomaly on the main server. We're shutting down all external access for a 24-hour diagnostic effective immediately. This includes all offshore banking portals. Arthur's blood ran cold. Shutting down now, he muttered. He looked at his Patek Philippe. 9:02 p.m. The transfer had completed at 9:00 p.m. But what if it had been flagged? What if the anomaly was his $20 million transfer? Arthur. What's wrong? Bella asked, her smile fading. You look like you've seen a ghost. It's nothing, he snapped, pushing her away more harshly than he intended. Just work. I need to make a call. He strode back to the stateroom, shoving a waiter out of his way. He slammed the door and grabbed his laptop, his hands shaking. He tried to log back into the Swiss banking portal. Access denied, account locked, pending security verification. No. He frantically dialed his private banker in Geneva. It went straight to a European voicemail. It was the middle of the night there. He tried his IT director. The phone rang once, then went to voicemail. He tried his CFO, the one he'd bribed. Voicemail. A primal animal panic started to rise in his chest. Had he been too arrogant? Had he tripped an automated alarm, or a darker thought? Eleanor. Her silence all day. He'd assumed she was crying at a spa. But what if her silence wasn't weakness? What if it was strategy? She's not smart enough, he said aloud, trying to convince himself. She's a gardener, a socialite. She doesn't have the first clue. But the image of her face, calm and cold, flashed in his mind. The way she'd asked about Rossi Holdings. He'd dismissed it as jealousy. What if it had been an investigation? He burst out of the stateroom, his face a mask of panic. He needed to get off this boat. He needed to get to his office. He needed to find out what was happening. Bella, he shouted. We're leaving. Now. What? But the party. Now, he roared, grabbing her arm. Arthur, stop, you're hurting me. He didn't care. He was dragging her toward the gangplank, where the valets were waiting when the yacht's powerful floodlights suddenly shut off, plunging the deck into near total darkness. The music died with a scratch. The guests gasped a collective sound of confusion and fear. And into the silence came a new sound, the thump, thump, thump of heavy-duty marine engines and the unfamiliar, terrifyingly calm voice of a woman on a megaphone. This is the Newport Beach Police Department. By the authority of the U.S. Coast Guard, this vessel is hereby boarded. All engines off. No one is to leave the yacht. Blue and red lights flashed, strobing across the deck, catching the guests in frozen tableaus of fear. Arthur froze at the gangplank, his hand still clamped on Bella's arm. He was trapped. A Coast Guard cutter, a massive grey behemoth, was blocking the yacht's path to the open sea, and pulling up alongside a smaller, faster police launch was preparing to board. At the bow of the launch stood Detective Mariah Carras, her hand on her hip. Beside her, Marcus Thorne, holding a briefcase like a weapon. And behind them, a figure stepped out of the shadows. It was Eleanor. She wore a tailored, dark blue power suit. Her hair was perfect. Her expression was serene. She looked up at her husband, stranded on his deck of sin, and her eyes were as cold and deep as the Pacific Ocean. The thud of the police launch hitting the hull was the sound of the guillotine dropping. A heavy boarding ramp was thrown across, and Detective Carras was the first one on deck, flanked by two uniformed officers. The partygoers, moments before a sea of decadent laughter, were now a silent, terrified audience. They parted like the Red Sea as Carras walked directly toward Arthur. Arthur Vance. Carras's voice was sharp, cutting through the stunned silence. "What is the meaning of this?" Arthur blustered, finally finding his voice. He tried to puff himself up, to radiate the authority that had always protected him. "This is a private party. I know the chief of police. I demand you leave my vessel immediately." "This vessel is now a crime scene, Mr. Vance," Carras said, ignoring his threats. "And you don't know the chief as well as you think you do. He signed the warrant." Arthur's face went white. "Warrant for what? A noise complaint." "That's enough," Carras said. "No one moves. No one touches their phones." Her eyes scanned the crowd and landed on Ben Harrington and the other investor, who were trying to sidle away toward the back of the yacht. "You two," Carras barked. "Mr. Harrington, Mr. Cho, don't move. We'll have plenty of questions for you." They froze, their faces ashen. The net was larger than Arthur had realized, and then Marcus Thorne and Eleanor Vance stepped onto the deck. The air crackled. This was no longer a police action. It was a public execution. Eleanor walked past the stunned guests, her heels clicking on the teak deck. She didn't look at any of them. Her eyes were locked on her husband. Bella Rossi was the first to break. The sight of Eleanor, not in tears, not in hysterics, but in a suit with the police, shattered her composure. "Eleanor!" She shrieked, her voice high and panicked. "What are you doing? Are you insane? You're embarrassing yourself. Tell them to leave." Eleanor didn't even glance at her. She stopped 5 feet from Arthur. Arthur stared at her, his mind racing, trying to find a move, an angle, a way out. There was none. The arrogance and charm were gone, replaced by a raw, naked panic. "Eleanor." "What is this?" He tried attempting a softer tone. This is some misunderstanding. A fight about Bella. You're going to ruin us, Eleanor. You're going to ruin me, all because you're jealous." This was his last play to paint her as the hysterical, scorned wife. Eleanor let the silence stretch. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and felt nothing. Just a vast, cold pity. "Us, Arthur," she finally said, her voice clear and calm, carrying to every corner of the deck. "There is no us. There is only you, a thief, and me, the woman who caught you." Arthur's face contorted in rage. You bitch! Get off my boat!" "That's the thing, Arthur," Eleanor said, allowing herself a small, cold smile. "It's not your boat." Marcus Thorne stepped forward, snapping open his briefcase. "Mr. Vance, this is an emergency court injunction, signed by Judge Peterson an hour ago. It freezes all your personal and corporate assets, pending a criminal investigation." "Investigation for what?" Arthur spat. "For this," Detective Carras said. She pulled the warrant from her jacket and unfolded it. "Arthur Vance, you are under arrest for 12 counts of wire fraud, 6 counts of embezzlement, 2 counts of conspiracy to commit fraud, and 1 count of aggravated identity theft." Carras nodded to her officers. "Cuff him." "Get your hands off me!" Arthur roared, trying to pull away, as the officers seized his arms. "You can't do this!" "Arthur Vance." "You were Arthur Vance," Marcus corrected him. The click of the handcuffs snapping shut was the loudest sound in the Newport harbor. The moment the steel touched his skin, Arthur's facade of power evaporated. He was just a man in a linen suit, his hands bound behind his back. He looked at Eleanor, his eyes burning with a desperate, pathetic hatred. "You did this," he hissed. "After everything I gave you, I made you someone. You were just a wallflower, living off your father's name. I built that company." "You ran my company," Eleanor corrected him, stepping closer. "You ran it into the ground while you were robbing it. My father built it. And I am the one who's saving it." "You'll regret this, Eleanor," he snarled. "You'll be ruined. The stock will plummet. You'll have nothing." "I'll have my self-respect," Eleanor said. "And I'll still have 51% of the company. You'll have a cellmate. And that Patek Philippe, it's evidence. It was bought with stolen funds." An officer gently unclasped the $100,000 watch from Arthur's wrist and dropped it into an evidence bag. Arthur let out a choked animal sound. It was then that Bella Rossi, who had been frozen in horror, seemed to understand her own predicament. Her future as the Queen of Newport was vanishing. She scrambled, lunging not at Eleanor, but at Arthur. "You told me it was your money," she screamed, clawing at his suit. "You told me she was fine with the divorce. You told me it was all legal. You used me. Get off me, you gold-digging whore!" Arthur bellowed back, trying to twist away from her. "Ms. Isabella Rossi." Detective Karras said, her voice cutting through the sordid display. Bella froze. "Rossi Holdings, LLC. Registered in the Cayman Islands. Ring a bell?" Karras asked. Bella's eyes widened in genuine terror. I don't know what you're talking about. He just told me to sign some papers. It was for a business, for our future." "That business was a shell corporation, Ms. Rossi," Marcus Thorne interjected, holding up a file. "A shell corporation to which $37 million of stolen funds were illegally wired. And this," he held up another paper, "is the deed to a $4 million condo in Dubai, purchased in your name with that money. You're not just a mistress, Ms. Rossi. You're a co-conspirator." "No," Bella shrieked. "No, he tricked me. I'm a victim, Eleanor. Tell them I'm a victim." She turned to Eleanor, her eyes pleading, tears of mascara streaming down her face. "Please, Eleanor, I'm pregnant. You can't do this to me. He's the monster, not me." This was the final desperate card. The plea for feminine solidarity. Eleanor looked at the crying woman, the red Gucci dress, the fake tears. She remembered the email, "I'm tired of hiding." "Pregnant," Eleanor said, her voice flat. "Then I suppose you should have thought of that before you helped him steal the future of my 5,000 employees. You weren't tricked, Bella. You were a willing accomplice. You just bet on the wrong horse." Eleanor nodded to Karras. "Ms. Rossi," Karras said, "put your hands behind your back. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud and receiving stolen property." "No, please." Bella collapsed, sobbing, as a female officer pulled her to her feet and cuffed her. Her red dress was hiked up, her designer image ruined. "You can't do this, I'm an influencer. You'll be influencing the prison commissary," Karras said dryly. As Bella Rossi was hauled to her feet, her desperate sobs echoed across the deck. The fight had gone out of her, replaced by the hiccuping, gasping cries of someone whose entire world had just dissolved. "I didn't know," she whimpered over and over, a pathetic mantra that convinced no one. "He promised me. He promised." The female officer, unmoved, guided her towards the gangplank, her red Gucci dress now looking like a garish costume, a symbol of her spectacular failure. With Bella's exit, the full scope of the trap snapped shut on the remaining conspirators. The two investors, Ben Harrington and Michael Cho, who had been frozen in place, were now the center of attention for two other officers. "Gentlemen, I believe you have some questions to answer," Detective Karras said, nodding to them. "This is a grotesque misunderstanding." Harrington blurted out, his face slick with sweat. He tried to laugh, a high, panicked sound. "We're just guests. We were advising Arthur on a merger, that's all. It was a standard deal." Marcus Thorne stepped forward, his eyes like ice chips. He held up a single printed email. "A standard deal. Mr. Harrington, is it also standard to accept a $2 million wire transfer to an untraceable shell company in Belize as an advisory fee?" He held up a second paper. "And Mr. Cho, your fee was the deed to a condo in Miami Beach. We have the wire confirmations. We have the forged signatures. You weren't advising him. You were his accomplices." Harrington's face crumpled. Cho, a quieter man, simply closed his eyes, defeated. "We'll cooperate," Cho whispered. "All of it. We'll tell you everything." "I'm sure you will," Karras said, as her officers cuffed them. "You have the right to remain silent." The rest of her words were lost, as the other guests, the sycophants, the fair-weather friends, began to panic. They saw the net widening and scrambled to distance themselves. "I barely knew him," one woman who had been laughing at Bella's jokes an hour earlier told an officer. "We just came for the party," another man insisted, grabbing his wife's hand. "We had no idea about any of this business stuff." They were like rats tripping over one another to get off the yacht, to disavow the man they had been toasting as a king moments before. An officer stood at the gangplank, methodically taking each name and phone number. They were all witnesses now, accessories to the most spectacular social and financial execution in Newport Beach history. Through it all, Arthur Vance stood alone, his hands cuffed behind him. He watched Bella get led away. He watched Harrington and Cho turn on him in a heartbeat, and he watched his friends scatter. The fog of his arrogance was finally clearing, leaving only the cold, sharp reality of his ruin. His entire empire, his web of lies, his beautiful mistress, his future, all of it gone in 10 minutes. He turned his movements stiff and robotic to face the architect of it all. Eleanor was standing 10 feet away, watching him. Not with hate, not with tears, but with a calm, almost curious detachment, as if studying a failed experiment. That look, her pity, was what finally broke him. "You," he whispered, his voice a low, seething hiss. And then he lunged. It was a wild, desperate, primal roar of a man with nothing left. "You'll pay for this!" The officers were on him in a second, slamming him back against the yacht superstructure. The impact rattled a tray of glasses, but Arthur didn't feel it. He was a caged animal, straining against his restraints, his face purple with rage. "You did this to me!" he screamed, spittle flying from his mouth. "You cold, empty bitch! You were nothing! A piece of furniture in my house. I gave you a life. I made you someone, and you ruined me for her. For a stupid intern." Eleanor didn't flinch. She took a slow, deliberate step toward him. The officers tensed, but she held up a hand. She would not be afraid of him. Not anymore. "You're wrong, Arthur," she said, her voice a low, steady counterpoint to his screams. "I didn't do this for her. I didn't even do this for me. I did this for my father. I did this for the 5,000 employees you were willing to destroy for a new condo and a 25-year-old. She stepped closer, her eyes locked on his. "You think I was alone? You were so busy building your new life, you never noticed the one I was building. I wasn't alone. I had Mr. Chen, the boring accountant. You never bothered to learn the name of who cracked your private ledger in 6 hours. I had Marcus, the old fossil you tried to force into retirement, who built a case file so ironclad you will never see daylight again. I had Detective Karras, who it turns out really hates arrogant men who think they're above the law. She was inches from his face now, her voice dropping to a whisper that was more chilling than his screams. You mistook my kindness for weakness. You mistook my insolence for stupidity. You didn't just cheat on your wife, Arthur. You tried to rob a Vance, and we don't tolerate thieves. She leaned in her final words for him and him alone. You thought you were a King Arthur. You're just a common thief in an expensive suit. And the dead weight you were so eager to cut, that was the anchor holding you to the world. Now you're just falling. She straightened her suit jacket, the picture of composure, and turned to the detective. Take them away, Detective Karras. The deck needs to be cleaned. Vessel is secure. Let's go. Karras nodded. Arthur said nothing else. The fight was gone, leaving a hollow, broken shell. He and his co-conspirators were frog-marched down the gangplank. On the dock it was pure chaos. The anonymous tip from Marcus had borne fruit. A wall of flashing cameras and shouting reporters greeted them. The strobing lights turned the humiliating walk into a living nightmare. Arthur, did you steal the money? Bella, was it all a lie? Mr. Vance, how does it feel? Arthur stumbled. His linen suit rumpled his face, a mask of shame. Bella, seeing the cameras, hid her face and began to wail, a truly pathetic sight. The King of Newport and his new queen were dragged away, not to a private jet, but to separate police cruisers, their new lives just beginning. On the yacht there was silence. The only sounds were the wind and the distant lapping of water. Eleanor stood alone on the deck now, a wasteland of half-eaten canapes and spilled champagne. Marcus came to stand beside her. It's done, he said softly. He'll be buried in a federal prison for 20 years, minimum. Good, Eleanor said. She walked over to a table and picked up an untouched full flute of Dom Perignon. She looked at the bubbles for a long moment, then calmly poured the entire glass over the side of the yacht, a final symbolic cleansing. She set the empty flute down with a decisive click. Marcus, she said, turning to him, her eyes already focused on the future. Have someone clean this up and sell the boat. I never liked it. She started walking toward the gangplank, not looking back. And Marcus, yes, Eleanor, send a memo to the board. Emergency meeting, 9 a.m. tomorrow, my office. The trial of Arthur Vance was the social and financial event of the season, a media circus that the press gleefully dubbed the billionaire's betrayal. Every day, Eleanor Vance walked into the courthouse impeccable in a series of severe dark suits, her face a mask of iron composure. She was the state's star witness. On the other side of the room, Arthur, now gaunt and stripped of his designer suits and arrogant charm, looked like a hollowed-out version of his former self. He was a defendant. She was an executioner. His expensive legal team tried every trick. They painted Eleanor as a vengeful, scorned woman, a hysterical wife who had fabricated a complex financial conspiracy to punish him for a simple affair. It fell apart on the stand. Mr. Chen's digital evidence was irrefutable, a perfect, damning timeline of theft. The two investors, Harrington and Cho, having turned state's evidence for a lighter sentence, laid out the entire conspiracy email by email. But the most devastating testimony came from Bella Rossi. She entered the courtroom not in Gucci red, but in a plain beige blouse, her hair in a mousy ponytail, tears already welling. She was playing her final role, the ultimate victim. She wept. She pointed at Arthur. She claimed she was a pawn in his monstrous game. "He made me do it all," she cried. "He told me the money was his, a private fund. He promised me a new life. He said she didn't care about him anymore." The performance was compelling right up until Arthur's own lawyer, in a desperate attempt to discredit her, began his cross-examination. "Ms. Rossi, you told my client you were pregnant, did you not? Was that also part of his master plan?" Bella's face froze. The courtroom went silent. I, she stammered. I thought I was. It was a mistake." "A mistake," the lawyer pressed. "Or was it a lie, Ms. Rossi?" "A calculated lie to pressure my client into leaving his wife faster. A lie to secure your own financial future." Bella collapsed into sobs. Her performance shattered. It was the truth. The pregnancy had been a fabrication, a final manipulative card she had played. The jury saw it all. Not a victim, but a failed co-conspirator, just as ruthless and greedy as the man she was trying to blame. The jury was out for less than 2 hours. The verdict was a formality. Guilty. On all 17 counts. At the sentencing, the judge looked down at Arthur with open contempt. "Mr. Vance," he said, his voice booming in the silent room, "you are a man of immense privilege. You had a respected name, a powerful company, and a family. You had everything. And you gambled it all, not out of need, but out of a profound, bottomless arrogance. You chose the path of a common con artist. You didn't just steal money. You betrayed the trust of your family and the livelihoods of 5,000 employees who depended on you." He paused. "This court sentences you to the maximum allowable 25 years in federal prison." Arthur let out a sound, a choked, strangled gasp, and visibly sagged as if his strings had been cut. He was no longer a king. He was an inmate. Bella Rossi, for her limited cooperation, received 3 years for conspiracy. The story was over for them. But for Eleanor, it was just beginning. As Arthur had predicted, the stock for Vance Global Logistics had tanked. The moment the cuffs had snapped on his wrist, the company's market cap had plummeted by 40%. The company was hemorrhaging money and credibility. The board, the same men who had clapped Arthur on the back, was in a full-blown panic. They called an emergency meeting. Eleanor Vance walked into the 30th floor boardroom at 9:00 a.m. sharp. The remaining board members, the ones not facing their own indictments, looked at her with a new terrified respect. A man named Henderson, the oldest member, cleared his throat. "Eleanor, Mrs. Vance, this is a catastrophe. We've lost $200 million in market cap. We're facing shareholder lawsuits. We have no CEO. We have no credibility. Frankly, our only move is an emergency sale. We need to find a buyer, liquidate, and salvage what we can." The other men nodded grimly. Eleanor, standing at the head of the table, was silent for a long moment. Then she said one word. "No." It was quiet, but it landed like a thunderclap. "Excuse me," Henderson stammered. "There will be no sale." Eleanor repeated her voice, cutting through the room. "Vance Global is not for sale." Another board member, Davies, scoffed. "Eleanor, with all due respect, you've spent the last decade running charity auctions. This is a billion-dollar logistics empire on the verge of collapse. We need a real CEO. Someone who can... A real so, Eleanor interrupted. She dropped a thick, spiral-bound binder onto the table. It landed with a heavy, definitive thud. "For 10 years, she said, her voice low and dangerous. "You all looked at me as Arthur's wife. You patted my head. You complimented my garden parties. And while you were all doing that, I was listening. I was reading every quarterly report you signed off on without a second thought. I was watching as you let my husband, the man you called a genius, hollow out my father's company with consulting fees and shell corporations. You didn't just fail the company. You failed your one job to watch. She looked at every face. This, she tapped the binder, is my 100-day plan. Effective immediately, the corporate jet is sold. The New York penthouse is on the market. All consulting contracts initiated by Arthur Vance are permanently terminated. Marcus Thorne is our new acting chief counsel, and David Chen, the man who actually found the rot you all ignored, is our new head of auditing and cybersecurity. She looked directly at Davis. You thought I was fragile. You thought I was dead weight. My father built this company on reliability. My husband nearly destroyed it with arrogance. As of this moment, I am the acting CEO and majority shareholder. You will either get in line or you will get out of my way. No one said a word. The king was gone. The queen had taken the throne. 6 months later, Eleanor stood at the same panoramic window in her new office, the CEO's office. The press had a new name for her, the Iron Vance. Her first act as CEO had been to fly commercial in coach to Singapore to personally meet with the shipping conglomerate Arthur had nearly lost. She saved the $300 million contract in a single meeting. The stock was already up 15%. She sipped her morning coffee, looking down at the Newport harbor. It was 6:00 a.m., and she was, as always, the first one in the slip where the Serenity used to be. A new, sleeker, more practical vessel was docked. It was named the James V after her father. It was a working ship, not a party boat. Her phone buzzed on the desk. A standard notification from the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Subject inmate status change. Vance Arthur, but 7789011. Transferred to USP, Victorville. It was a digital ghost, a reminder of a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. She looked at the message for a long, cold second, seeing not a man, but a mistake. She pressed delete. Eleanor Vance turned back to the window, watching the sun rise over her harbor. She had work to do. And just like that, Eleanor Vance didn't just get her revenge, she got her company back. She proved that being underestimated is the ultimate weapon. The king was dethroned, the mistress was exposed, and the true queen finally took her seat at the head of the table. What did you think of Eleanor's takedown? Was it justice, or was it cold-blooded? Let me know in the comments below what your favorite twist was. If you loved this story and want more tales of dramatic takedowns and shocking real-life karma, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss an upload. And if you have a story you think we should tell, share it with us. Thanks for watching.